A glass shattered in the night, a girl's cry for help. The sound of breaking glass echoed through the narrow apartment above a closed bakery in Brooklyn. 9-year-old Lily Carter froze at the bedroom doorway, her small fingers clutching a worn-out bunny plush. Her mother Claire lay on the kitchen floor, a dark stain spreading beneath her head. A shattered water glass glimmered under the dim light, and steam curled from the kettle left on the stove. "Mom?" Lily whispered, her voice trembling. No answer. She wanted to scream, but she remembered what her mother had taught her during their what-if talks. If anything bad happens, call Aunt Grace. Lily crept across the cold tiles on her socks, careful not to step on the glass. Her tiny hands grabbed the phone from the counter. Fingers shaking, she scrolled to Grace's number in the contacts, but her thumbs slipped. She pressed call anyway. La. A deep voice answered. "Hello?" Lily hesitated. I'm sorry. Is this Grace?" "No. I think I called the wrong number. But my mom, she fell. She's bleeding. I don't know what to do." There was silence on the line. Then the man spoke again, calm but firm. "Where are you?" "Above Marley's Bakery. The door's green. Apartment 2C. Stay put, I'm coming." On the other side of the city, Ethan Price tossed on a coat and grabbed his car keys. He didn't call anyone. He didn't even question why he was doing this. Something in the little girl's voice had cut through the cold walls he'd built around his life. 15 minutes later, his black sedan skidded to a halt outside the crumbling building. He spotted the green door and bolted up the creaking stairs. Apartment 2C's door stood slightly ajar. He knocked once. The door opened wider, revealing a frightened girl in oversized pajamas, her bunny clutched tight. "You came," she whispered. "I did." Ethan stepped inside. The wrong number that changed everything? The apartment smelled faintly of burnt toast and cleaning detergent. Ethan's sharp eyes took in the cramped space. Dishes stacked in the sink, a calendar with circled dates, a pile of unfolded laundry in the corner. Claire lay on her side near the fridge, her breathing shallow, her face pale against the linoleum. Blood trickled from a cut on her temple, weaving through her hair. Ethan knelt beside her, checking her pulse. Weak, but steady. He scanned for other injuries, speaking softly. "What's your name?" "Lily," the girl replied. "Lily, grab your coat. We need to take your mom to the hospital." "But Aunt Grace." "I'm closer than Aunt Grace. She doesn't have time to get here." His voice was calm, but left no room for argument. Lily hesitated, then grabbed her little pink jacket from the chair. Ethan lifted Claire effortlessly. She was lighter than she should have been, too light for someone working 2 jobs to care for a child. He cradled her against his chest and nodded toward the door. "Stay close to me." The icy wind hit them as they stepped outside. Ethan's car engine roared to life, and he gently placed Claire in the back seat, Lily climbing in beside her. As he pulled out onto the snow-dusted street, Ethan's phone buzzed on the dashboard. He ignored it. "Are you a doctor?" Lily asked timidly from the back. "No." "Then why are you helping us?" Ethan glanced in the rearview mirror. The girl's big brown eyes weren't afraid. They were filled with cautious hope. "Because you needed someone to," he said simply. The hospital's glowing sign appeared ahead. Ethan's grip on the steering wheel tightened as he drove faster, his mind running calculations. Nearest ER, shortest wait time, best chance for Claire. "You're gonna be okay, Lily," he added quietly. "I promise." Lily clutched her bunny tighter, whispering, "You sound like a hero in a movie." Ethan didn't respond. He didn't feel like a hero, but for the first time in years, he didn't feel like a ghost either. A stranger in the dark arrives at the door. The hospital doors slid open with a hiss as Ethan strode inside, Claire still cradled in his arms. Nurses glanced up, startled by the sight of the tall man with a pale woman in his hold and a small girl trailing close behind. "We need help," Ethan said, his voice low but commanding. "Sama," a young nurse hurried over with a gurney. "What happened?" "She fell, hit her head. She's unconscious but breathing." They guided Claire onto the gurney, wheeling her toward the trauma bay. Lily reached for her mother's hand, but was gently pulled back by another nurse. "It's okay, sweetheart. Let's get your mommy taken care of first," the nurse soothed. Lily looked up at Ethan with wide, pleading eyes. "You'll stay, won't you?" "I'm not going anywhere," Ethan replied firmly. He guided her to the waiting area, where they sat on a worn-out bench beneath flickering fluorescent lights. Lily's small fingers clung to the sleeve of his coat. "Is she going to die?" she whispered. Ethan crouched down to her level, meeting her gaze. "No, your mom's strong, and the doctors here will help her." "You promise?" "I do." Minutes stretched into an hour. The quiet hum of hospital machinery filled the space. Lily refused water and snacks, insisting on sitting upright, eyes fixed on the trauma doors. When the nurse finally returned, she offered a small smile. "Your mother is stable. She has a concussion and dehydration but no internal bleeding. She's resting now." Lily exhaled in relief. Then, softly, she asked, "Can I see her?" "In a little while," the nurse said kindly. "Up lie." Ethan placed a hand on Lily's shoulder. "You did everything right tonight. You were brave." Lily blinked up at him. "You're not Grace. You're not even someone we know, but you came." Ethan didn't respond. For a man who built walls around himself for years, he didn't know why he came either. But something about this little girl and her quiet strength had pulled him in, rushing through the snow with a fading hope. Claire blinked against the harsh white light, her head pounding as though it had been split open. The smell of antiseptic and the rhythmic beep of a monitor told her where she was before her eyes fully adjusted. She shifted slightly, wincing at the tug of an IV in her hand. Then her gaze fell on a tall man sitting silently in the corner of the hospital room. He wasn't wearing scrubs, he wasn't a doctor, and he wasn't anyone she recognized. Her heart jumped. Who are you?" she rasped. The man stood slowly, his voice calm but deep, like someone used to delivering bad news. "My name's Ethan. Your daughter called me by mistake, said you fell. I brought you here." Claire's dry lips parted, her memory coming back in pieces. The kitchen floor, her knees buckling, Lily's terrified face, then blackness. "Oh, God," she whispered. "I told her if anything happened, call Grace. She must have dialed the wrong number." "She did," Ethan said, "but she also saved your life." Claire's throat tightened. "And you came anyway?" "Yes." She stared at him for a long moment. "Why?" He paused, then replied softly, "Because no one else did." The door creaked open, breaking the heavy silence. Lily peeked in, clutching her bunny, her eyes wide with worry. When she saw her mother sitting up, she let out a tiny gasp and ran forward. "Mama!" Claire opened her arms, pulling Lily close. "Hey, baby, I'm okay now." Lily buried her face in her mother's shoulder, whispering, "He came, Mama. He helped us." Claire looked over her daughter's head at Ethan, her eyes glassy but steady. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for helping her, for helping me." Ethan didn't nod, didn't smile, but there was a slight shift in his posture, a loosening of tension like he'd been holding something heavy for too long. "You don't owe me anything," he said simply. But as he turned to leave, Claire called out, "Wait, I didn't get your last name." He glanced over his shoulder. "Price, Ethan Price." The name lingered in Claire's mind as the door clicked shut behind him. She thought she'd heard it before. She just didn't know why. The emergency room and a silent promise. The cab dropped Claire and Lily off just as the first light of dawn broke over the Brooklyn skyline. Claire's hands shook as she unlocked the apartment door, fatigue pressing down heavier than the cold. As soon as they stepped inside, Lily clung to her mother's arm. "You're really okay, right?" she asked softly. "I'm okay now, sweetheart," Claire whispered, kissing the crown of her daughter's head. "Go change into your pajamas. I'll make us something warm." Lily shuffled to the bedroom, her bunny dragging across the floor. Claire stood in the kitchen, staring at the dried stain on the linoleum where she had fallen hours earlier. Slowly, she sank to her knees and began scrubbing the floor with a damp rag. Her movements were quiet, methodical. She didn't cry, she just erased. A knock startled her. 3 firm raps, not the hesitant tap of a neighbor. Claire froze. At this hour, it couldn't be Grace. The landlord wouldn't bother so early. She opened the door a crack. Ethan stood there, a paper bag in one hand, no coat this time, just a sweater under a blazer. "I brought some basic supplies," he said. "Antiseptics, bandages. I wasn't sure what the hospital gave you." "You didn't have to do that," Claire replied, surprised by both the gesture and his presence. I didn't do it for thanks, Ethan said simply. May I come in? Before Claire could answer, Lily peeked out from the bedroom, her hair messy from sleep. Her face lit up. Hi, Mr. Ethan, she chirped. Claire hesitated, then stepped aside. Come in. Ethan placed the bag gently on the counter and scanned the small apartment. His eyes lingered briefly on the kitchen floor before returning to hers. Your daughter is stronger than most adults I know, he said. Claire crossed her arms. She's had to be. There was a beat of silence before Ethan spoke again, his voice quieter this time. Claire, before last night, did you work at St. Andrew's Hospital? Her breath caught. How do you know about that? I've heard whispers, Ethan replied. And I need to ask, did you leave voluntarily? No, her jaw tightened. I filed a complaint after a patient died due to faulty equipment. They silenced me before I could push further. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. Do you still have any documentation? Claire studied him, her mind racing. Why do you care? Because St. Andrew's receives funding from an organization I used to sit on. And your story, it's not the first red flag I've heard. Her expression hardened. If you're digging for scandal, you're wasting your time. I'm not, Ethan said evenly. I just want the truth. Claire turned, opened a drawer near the fridge, and pulled out a worn brown envelope. I was going to submit this to the medical board, but I never got the chance. Ethan took the envelope carefully. You trust me with this? He asked. I don't trust easily, Claire replied. But if you can do something with it, quietly, then keep it. Lily appeared again, now in mismatched pajamas, clutching her bunny. Can you stay for breakfast, Mama? Claire let out a soft laugh. The tension in her shoulders eased slightly. Maybe next time, she said. He has important work. Ethan glanced at Lily and offered the faintest smile. Next time sounds good. But as he turned to leave, Claire called after him. You didn't answer my question last night. He paused. Why did you come? She asked. Ethan's voice was steady. Because I know what it feels like to need someone, and no one shows up. And then he was gone. You're not who I called, but you came. Ethan sat in his dimly lit office, the city glowing cold and distant beyond the glass. The brown envelope Claire had given him lay open on his desk. Pages of reports, emails, and one damning signature circled in red. He hadn't slept since that night. Not really. His fingers drummed against the wood as he spoke into his phone. Jonas, I need a full audit of the St. Andrew's Medical Fund, every grant, every subcontractor. Quietly. Yes, sir, came the reply. Jonas knew better than to ask why. When the call ended, Ethan leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. The memory of Claire's steady eyes and Lily's hopeful voice kept tugging at him in ways he didn't expect. A notification flashed across his screen. Irregular payouts flagged. CFO, Andrew Cullen. The name sent a cold ripple through him. Cullen, the same man who'd signed off the defective equipment. The same man tied to two of Ethan's failed wellness initiatives years ago. Munentidus. This wasn't negligence. This was deliberate. Munentidus. Ethan didn't call his lawyers. He didn't call the board. Instead, he dialed the only number that felt right. It rang twice before Claire's groggy voice answered. Hello? It's me, Ethan said softly. I'm sorry to call so late. There was a pause. I'm listening. I need you to tell me about that night at the hospital. Not the report, not the emails. The truth, what you saw, what you felt. Claire exhaled shakily. Connor, 7 years old. Leukemia. His heart was weak from chemo. I warned them we needed round-the-clock monitoring, but they gave us a telemetry unit that had already flagged errors the week before. I reported it. Nothing changed. She paused. Ethan stayed silent, letting her gather the strength. Night shift. I was covering for another nurse. Connor went into cardiac arrest just after 2 a.m. The alert never sounded. We found him when his mother screamed. He died 40 minutes later. Her voice broke. They told me it was a fluke. But I saw the logs. The device report had been altered by the time I accessed it again. Ethan's hand curled into a fist. This was never about revenge for you, he said quietly. No, Claire whispered. It's about stopping it from happening again. Ethan closed his eyes, his voice low and steady. Then let me help you. For the first time in years, Claire didn't feel alone. And for the first time in years, neither did Ethan. How are you feeling about the story so far? I'd really love to know what you think. Did it touch your heart or maybe remind you of something from your own life? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And while you're at it, tell me, where in the world are you listening from? I'd love to see how far this story travels. Secrets of a Fallen Nurse and a Corrupt Hospital. The boardroom on the 47th floor of Atlas Corp Tower had never been so quiet. Ethan stood at the head of the long glass table, a slim folder resting beneath his hand. Across from him, Charles Whitman, an old friend and one of the board's senior advisors, flipped through its contents in silence. These aren't public records, Charles murmured, eyes scanning signatures and internal emails. No, Ethan replied flatly, but they're real. Claire's name was everywhere in the file, her formal complaint, her altered reports, and the defective equipment she'd tried to flag. But the most damning piece was the authorization for those devices, signed by CFO Andrew Cullen. Except Claire had never worked in finance, and the signature wasn't hers. Charles closed the folder slowly. Ethan, if even half of this is true, we're not talking about negligence. We're talking about deliberate fraud and concealment during fatal investigations. I know, Ethan said. His jaw tightened. That's why it can't stay buried. Charles leaned back. This won't just shake the medical fund. It'll collapse every partnership tied to it. The backlash. I'm not here to protect reputations, Ethan interrupted. I'm here to protect the people your funding failed, starting with Claire and every patient like Connor. Charles studied him for a long moment. You want justice. I want decency, Ethan said, his voice low but firm. She spoke up once and lost everything. I won't let that happen again. Charles exhaled. And Claire? Does she want this fight? Ethan thought of the way her hands had trembled when she passed him the file, but her eyes had remained steady. She doesn't want revenge, he said. She wants it to stop. Charles tapped the folder once. Then we'll start with the audit committee, quietly. No leaks. As Ethan turned to leave, Charles called after him. You've changed, Price. You used to walk away from messes like this. Ethan paused at the door. Not this time, he said. Not when good people bleed in the shadows. A hidden file and the man who refused to walk away. The knock came just as Claire was finishing Lily's bedtime story. She opened the door to find Ethan standing there, coat unbuttoned, eyes shadowed with exhaustion but lit with determination. Claire didn't speak. She stepped aside, letting him in. In the small kitchen, the scent of cinnamon tea lingered in the air. Lily's nightlight hummed softly from the bedroom. Ethan placed a thin folder on the table. Claire, he began, his voice low but steady, I want you to come back with me, not to St. Andrews as a nurse, but as an independent advisor. You're the only one who knows the system from the inside and isn't tainted by it. Claire's fingers tightened on her mug. No, Ethan blinked. You haven't even heard my plan. I don't need to, she said sharply. I lived it. Every hallway, every emergency shift, every patient they erased. You think I don't want justice? I do, but I also want to protect what's left of me. Ethan's voice softened. I wouldn't ask if I didn't believe you were the only one who could hold this together. That's not fair, she whispered. You're asking me to walk back into the place that broke me. Do you know what it takes to survive that and stay sane? Ethan didn't answer. The silence was broken by Lily's small voice from the hallway. Mama? Claire turned. You should be asleep, honey. Lily shuffled forward, clutching her stuffed bunny. If you help him, will the bad people stop hurting others? Claire's breath caught. She looked at her daughter, the reason she had stayed quiet for so long. Then she looked at Ethan, waiting, not pushing. She exhaled slowly. All right, I'll do it. Ethan's shoulders dropped slightly in relief. But one condition, Claire said firmly. I don't do this for you. I don't do it for your company or your board. I do it for the patients who never got a second chance. And when this is over, I walk away." Ethan nodded. "That's all I hoped for." And for the first time, the tension between them shifted, not into ease, but into purpose. The battle behind closed doors. The conference room was silent except for the faint hum of the city outside. Rain streaked the glass walls as Ethan and Claire stood side by side, facing a table of executives whose faces shifted between unease and outright panic. At the center of the table sat Andrew Cullen, his expression tight but calm, like a man who still believed he could control the storm. "You've gone too far this time, Price," Cullen said evenly. "Do you really think a disgraced nurse and a stack of old papers can take me down?" Claire stepped forward before Ethan could speak. Her voice was steady, sharp. "This isn't about me. It's about Connor. About every child and every family your negligence destroyed." Cullen smirked. "Negligence? Or maybe just a nurse who couldn't handle the pressure and needed someone to blame." "Enough," Ethan cut in, his tone like steel. He slid a folder across the table. "This isn't hearsay, Cullen. It's documented fraud, forged signatures, including Claire's, and a money trail leading straight to shell companies tied to you." The executives murmured, uneasy. Cullen's smirk faltered for the first time. "Even if any of that were true, do you think the board will back you? You're just a man with a savior complex." Ethan didn't flinch. "Maybe, but I'm also the man holding the audit results. And as of 5 minutes ago, the board voted unanimously to suspend you pending federal investigation." The color drained from Cullen's face. "You can't do this." "We already have." Claire looked him in the eye. "You used my name because you thought no one would believe me. Because I was already broken. But you were wrong. Someone believed." Security entered the room quietly. Cullen rose from his seat, his composure cracking as they let him out. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the room. Then Charles Whitman, the senior advisor, turned to Ethan. "You've done it, but at what cost?" Ethan glanced at Claire, who stood tall despite the weight of her memories. "Whatever it cost," Ethan said, "it was worth it. Justice quietly served and a new beginning." 48 hours after Andrew Cullen's suspension, the news hadn't reached the public. Ethan made sure of it. No press conferences, no headlines. Just quiet justice working its way through the system. Claire stood by the window in Ethan's office, arms crossed, watching raindrops trace lines down the glass. "They pulled the faulty monitors from every facility 2 days ago," Ethan said gently. "Every single one flagged and replaced." "You did that," Claire replied. Her voice was soft, but her face unreadable. "You helped me do it," he corrected. She turned to him, her expression calm but resolute. "Then I'm done." Ethan's brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" "I'm not going back to hospitals. Not to boards. Not to systems that swallow people whole. I've given too much of myself already. I won't do it again." Ethan nodded slowly, as though he'd expected this. "I understand." But after a pause, he added, "I want you to stay on as an independent auditor. Flexible hours, full benefits, triple what you made before." Claire met his gaze firmly. "No." He raised an eyebrow. "It's not charity, it's what you're worth." "Exactly," she said softly. "That's why I get to choose what peace looks like for me." Ethan didn't argue. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You're stronger than you think," he murmured. "I've had to be," Claire replied. The weight between them wasn't heavy this time. It was freeing, the knock that meant more than words. It was Thursday night. The city outside buzzed under the faint drizzle, the streets shimmering like liquid glass under the lamplight. Ethan stood at the bottom of Claire's apartment building, a single bag of takeout in his hand. He looked up at the second-floor window. Warm light glowed faintly behind the curtains. He didn't knock immediately. He stood there, listening to the soft patter of rain on the steps, letting the quiet wash over him. When he finally knocked, it wasn't tentative. 3 steady raps. The door opened, and there was Lily, wrapped in a cardigan 2 sizes too big, her face brightening into a grin. "You're late," she whispered. "I know." Ethan said with the faintest smile. "Is your mom here?" "She's making tea," Lily replied, stepping aside. In the kitchen, Claire stood barefoot, stirring something on the stove. Her hair was tied back, no makeup, her presence softer but no less steady. She turned when she saw him. Their eyes met, not as nurse and stranger, not as a woman saved and a man who saved her, but as two people who had walked through a storm and found each other on the other side. "I didn't come to change your life," Ethan said quietly. Claire's lips curved slightly. "Good, because I'm not looking for a savior." He stepped closer. "I came because I think I need mine to change." For a moment neither spoke. Then Claire handed him a second spoon. "Then stir this," she said softly. "Don't let it burn." Ethan laughed quietly, surprised by the simplicity of it. No grand declarations, no neat endings, just a beginning. Lily giggled from the table, flipping through her coloring book. And for the first time in years, Ethan Price felt like he wasn't just passing through someone else's story. He belonged. 2 cups of tea and the start of belonging. The kitchen was warm, the faint scent of garlic and thyme rising as Ethan stirred the pot beside Claire. Outside, rain tapped against the glass, but inside the small apartment, everything felt still. Claire handed him a bowl. "Careful, it's hot." Ethan smiled faintly, taking it from her hands. "You trust me not to spill this?" "Not really," she teased. "But you came all this way, so you might as well try." At the table, Lily sat cross-legged, her bunny plush tucked under her arm. She looked between them with a knowing smile only children seem to have. "Are you staying for dinner, Mr. Ethan?" she asked innocently. He glanced at Claire. "If it's okay with your mom." Claire met his gaze. For a moment there was no hesitation. "Yes," she said softly. "It's okay." As they ate, the conversation drifted from simple things, schoolwork, Lily's favorite books, to quiet pauses that spoke louder than words. When the dishes were done, Ethan helped Claire wipe down the counter. He moved carefully, almost reverently, as though the small kitchen held more weight than any of his boardrooms ever could. "You know," he said finally, "this feels different." Claire raised an eyebrow. "Different how? Like something I can't buy? Or fix? Or control?" She leaned back against the counter, folding her arms. "Maybe because it isn't any of those things." Ethan nodded slowly. "Maybe because it's real." In the corner, Lily had curled up with her coloring book, eyelids fluttering as sleep pulled her under. Claire watched her daughter for a long moment, then turned back to Ethan. "You didn't have to stay, you know," she said gently. "I know," Ethan replied, "but I wanted to." There were no grand speeches, no dramatic music swelling in the background. Just the soft hum of a heater, the steady drip of rain, and two people finding their way to something they didn't realize they'd been searching for all along. For the first time in years, Ethan Price didn't feel like the man who had everything but belonged nowhere. Here, in a modest apartment with a woman and her little girl, he felt like he had finally found a place to begin again. If this story moved you, reminded you that healing is real, or renewed your belief in second chances, we invite you to subscribe to Healing Stories. Here, we share real-life journeys of strength, love, and hope. Stories that speak straight to the soul. Thank you for being here. And always remember, no matter how far you fall, there's always a way back to the light. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below and let us know.